Jason Matthews of Matthews Financial. Nice round of applause.
So, my name is Jason Matthews. I'm President and CEO of Matthews Financial. What I always like to say is the things we do today will affect the things we do tomorrow. We see that in all aspects of life. You see that person who might have diabetes because they eat chips every day, like my dad. And he was addicted to chips, Lay's, and eats them every day, eating bad or eating fast food. And you see that with your health ramifications. I see that a lot with a lot of my clients. So what I always want to say is the things that we do now is going to prepare us for the good or bad down the road. I know also another example that I worked out with a guy at 85 years old, twice a week. Still hits the weights. Mind is strong. Why? Because he's a vegan, a vegetarian, and now I still eat meat. He says every time he hears me talk about eating meat, he's going to talk greater things about my funeral because he thinks I'm going to live longer than me. But I don't think so. So just to give you guys a little background on myself. I've been doing insurance and retirement planning now for 10 years, which is a huge thing. So I have seen it where people making tons of money in real estate the first time around, taking tons of cash out their homes, refinancing like crazy, seen the bubbles hit in the '08. The economy almost failed. The American economic and actually world economic system has failed, and have seen it come back to life and actually sustain and stagnate, I like to say. Ever since then, I'm a board member of the Urban Financial Services Coalition, the Urban Banking Services. And what we do, and I tell everybody, I don't make you rich. All I do is sustain your lifestyle. If you're here, you're living, and you're sick, or anywhere it goes. Perfect example of that right now, working with one of my clients is sick, making sure they have the same lifestyle while they're sick. While last year I was working with a lot of guys from AT&T who now just playing golf all the time. So what I do is just make sure you're not going to get rich with me. We're going to make sure you don't go broke and you can still live the lifestyle you're accustomed to. So there's a couple things that I do. We do life insurance, income replacement, long-term care, and then more importantly, we talk about retirement plan, which is a fold of the whole thing, a whole plan put together for you. Before I go into me, I like to talk about what's going on in the economy. If you guys can repeat, the S&P hit 2,000 for the first time. Yeah. Good time in the market, right? Also, across the country, though, people are talking about increases in minimum wage. You start seeing minimum wage hike. And you're hearing right now the gap between wealth, which is a huge separation between the top 1% and regular incomes in America. And when we look at that, we're going to have to see how's that going to affect us as far as our plan, for our retirement plan down the road. Right now, also, if you look at real estate, especially in California, over 40% of real estate purchases are cash purchases right now. 40% they're saying. And at this is right now, also what we're seeing right now is tons of money in technology. Uber is worth now more than Avis and Hertz combined. It's another technology company today who got over $1 billion today. The money is happening in technology. And what we like to do is watch the flow of money, watch the bubbles, the peaks, and watch the bulls and bears happening in the market so we can properly plan for the future. One quote when I talk about retirement is not how much something is worth, it's how much money you put in our pocket on a consistent basis. How many of you guys know who Allen Iverson is?
Sure.
Right? Made tons of money in his working career. Broke. Divorce court asked his ex-wife for money for her to buy him a hamburger afterwards. Why? Because his cash flow ended. And when his cash flow ended, because of not proper planning, his whole lifestyle ended. Foreclosures. Imagine you go to divorce court asking your wife for money for a hamburger. It's a shame, especially when you make over $200 million in your career. So when we talk about the 5 things that deflate retirement, there's a couple of things we have to look at. One thing is life expectancy. The second thing is standard of living, inflation, rate of return, and the last thing is taxes. Now let's talk about life expectancy. When Social Security first came around, do anybody know what the life expectancy was at the time for people?
63. 45.
63.
63.
What's the life expectancy now for somebody who's 65? Right?
75.
You're 84. You're going to be living in your 80s. Right? And if you're a couple, one of you guys going to live to 91. Back in the 80s when Hallmark first came out with their 100-year-old car, they only had one copy. Now you go, they got a whole selection of ones. You can pick the Ebony collection, the funny joke ones, the one you open up, you can hear the laugh for that person over 100. So when we look at retirement, before we look at retirement, we're not just looking at how we're going to live 5 years after retirement, 10 years. How we're going to live when we're in our 80s, our 90s. What is that going to be? And how are we properly planning for that? You know? Because oftentimes we spend more money on the weekends than we do on the weekdays. Am I right? And when you retire, every day is a weekend. I talked to my mom. She's been retired for 4 years. She can't tell you what day of the week it is. She don't know if it's Saturday or Wednesday. Why? Because every day is a weekend. Only day she do remember is Tuesdays, because that's $5 at the movie theater on Tuesdays. That's it. But for most people retired, they don't keep up with the dates. What's the point? And they spend money, go out with your friends, you're at home. You can't just watch TV all day. It's unhealthy. You got to find other things to entertain, so you're always spending money. So when we look at retirement, we have to look at our standard of living. And when we look at what's our standard of living in retirement, are you going to be the guy who wants to play golf all day? Is your standard of living where you're going to be traveling around the world? And based off the numbers and demographics, I'm a big numbers and demographics and history, but if you look at demographics, most people only travel for a few years after retirement. And after they travel around the world, they get tired of planes and everything else and they go back onto a cruise. And they do a cruise for about 4.5 years. Or they get an RV for 4.5 years and get tired of driving those big old RVs and these lifestyle change. So when we look at retirement, what's going to be for you? I have some clients when we retire from AT&T or a teacher or principal, and they started their own business. Kids out the house, less responsibilities. Now they're doing it one of their hobbies that they have a passion for. My grandfather's like that. He does wood and photography. He doesn't charge for it, but that's what he loves to do. But even so, we have to look at when we get sick. You know, we all might have a family member who had dementia or Alzheimer's or needs to be taken care of. What's that lifestyle going to be? Do you want to be at that place that's a dump, that smells like, they have horrible service that you see in the movies or the horror flicks? Or do you want to be somewhere that's nice? Trilogy. That's when people come by, you still eating well. Those type of things we have to consider our standard of living when we do retire. Now this is, back in the day, I remember gas was $1 when I was in high school. I used to get $5 at the time. I used to drive my friends around for $5. I remember when chickens were cheaper, and I remember when Big Macs were a lot bigger and they were $1. And I'm a person where I don't believe what the government says at all. I believe everything off of facts and numbers don't lie. And right now, we have a problem with inflation. And one thing, did anybody listen to Janet Yellen the other day or today? She said we don't have a problem with inflation.
Bull.
Which is bull. We see it when I go to the grocery store right now.
She don't have a problem with inflation.
Right. And I know I have a problem with inflation when I look at chicken. I'm like, man, chicken's $9 for a rotisserie chicken. Fast food, I remember, used to be $1.99, $2.99 for a value. Now I don't eat it no more. But now it's $7. Your PG&E and Comcast bill has drastically went up. And more expensive than that, higher education, which I think is going to be one of the biggest bubbles happening. Yeah. When you got Cal right now, charging $25,000 to go to Cal. And every year it goes up and up and up.
That's annual?
Annual.
I give you a good one. I went to my place. I get on Tuesday and Wednesdays. Used to be the $5.99 car wash. Mm-hmm. $7.99 now.
And don't wash your own car. You might get penalized a fee now because they're driving in California. All right. So when we look at things, we have to look at inflation when we do retire. And I'm going off track from this. But we have to consider what's going to be inflation when we do retire. Because if we base our retirement just we're going to save enough money, put it into a savings account, that savings account is not keeping up with inflation. And these are a bunch of numbers and everything, but it's not. And then your mother and everybody who's used to just living off of Social Security, which right now half of America has less than $50,000 in their 401k fund. And then so most people are going to be living off of Social Security. Social Security only went up 1%. But your health care, mine went up drastically. My health care is more than double this year. My food has went up drastically. So when we look at things, come on in. I see the card. They got a Fidelity card right there. Steve's probably a real estate broker. And then we have to look at energy, the price of energy. Water now is one up. Since we have a drought in California, even though everybody's dumping water on top of their head for ALS. Right? But we have to, right? We have to consider inflation. Think about it. If you put $100 in, 10 years down the road, you put it in the bank, and that's all you have is just have your money in your CDs and everything. interest rates are low, we're getting killed. I remember in 08 and 09, interest rates for when we put it into annuities, we're getting what, 6.75%? And now you're getting lucky to get, in the bank, you're lucky to get 1%. If you're looking hard. I mean, you're looking
I'm about to say,
hard.
where's that bank?
Right? You're looking hard. It's an internet bank, but it's not your brick and mortar bank. So when we look at retirement, we have to look at inflation. And if you're retired, you have to look even more. Because true inflation for a retiree is probably around 8.7%, 8.3%. Which is crazy. That means in a couple, when you retire, and you don't live off Social Security, maybe you have to look for that second job if you don't plan correctly. And what happens for most people retiring, most people are not retiring when they're expecting to retire. Right? How many people you know got laid off from a job who's older and starting getting age discrimination? That's the common thing. I'm surprised there's more lawsuits about it. You know, you get laid off from your job, making $100,000, $150,000 a year, doing good for yourself. Look for that same job now. Nobody wants to hire you a lot of times when you're older. Why? Because you look at your healthcare costs. You feel like you could train somebody who's younger and who has more energy. You feel like you might be stubborn, so you might not. But there's a lot of age discrimination. And people are older who thought they were going to retire at 65 now are facing the fact that they're retiring at 58, 55, and it's something. So when we look at financial planning, even as a planner, even if you don't work with me, I tell people, when you look at financial planning, you look at it as, this is my plan, but I might have to make some adjustments on the way. And I'm working with a planner who's going to help me with those adjustments. Because I might say I'm retiring this way, I might retire another. But the AT&T give them a nice little pension and say, take it or leave it, add an extra towards their pension. And when someone took it. So we have to plan for that down the road. Let's look at a rate of return. All right. How many of you guys, what's the average rate of return in the stock market? 15%? But you're about 7.5%, 8%. Market bounce back, so we'll probably be back at 8. Historically wise, when we look at rate of inflation, we think about our rate of return is going to be 10%, 8%. What about real estate? What's your average real estate rate of return in the Bay Area right now?
Well, if you talk about price growth, it's a lot.
Year over year in Oakland.
I mean, it's 20%, but that's not accurate.
Right.
I mean, maybe like 10%.
10%, then we have to pay you. You got to pay for the loan. We have to pay for our expenses. So when we look at true rate of return, we have to look at the cost that goes along with that rate of return. So even though your guy, your 401k plan now, which is a big thing that's going on, saying that the average over the 10-year historical average of that mutual fund is 10%, we have to include the fees that go along with it. And when we do those fees and calculate the fees, how is that going to affect me during my retirement? And that's why now, if you have your new 401k plan package, your 403 package, or whatever qualified plan package now, they have to include the fees, which been a law now for a year. And you have to calculate that towards your retirement. And my true feeling about rate of return is this. With demographic shifts, the market has been going up. No doubt about it. SP 500 has, and that's due to technology and QE3, where there's a lot of printing going on our society. I don't think the rate of return is going to consistently stay where it was. I don't think you're going to get that historical 8 to 10% in the stock market. It's not. The simple fact is people get older. What do you do when you get older? You get safer. You're not as risky no more. So what are you doing? You're putting your money in more safer assets. And you're starting to see a trend now of people now switching the money from risky assets to safe. At the same time, these companies are not hitting their numbers. Stock market is doing great. And that's due to stock buybacks. But if you look at true people are buying and consumers purchasing, consumers are not purchasing like they used to. So if the market, once we get out of QE3, the market is not going to get the same rate of return as it once was, simply because we are getting older. When you're younger, you buy more things. You go out more, you buy more bottles when you're 20 years old, alcohol. You spend $20 on it. But as you get older, you're shifting on how you spend your money. Now you think about retirement, so you say, I want to save and conserve a little bit more. You don't go out to spend money on girls as much anymore, so you stay at home and watch football games, right? Instead of going out with your boys and buying a couple of drinks and spending $100. So when we look at rate of return in the future, we have to think that it's not going to be like how we thought it was. And those averages that you hear you got from Vanguard telling you, this is the historical average, it's not going to be that anymore. And that's just a fact. And while the world keeps printing money, things that are happening around the world that's not going to make sure these rate of returns sustain themselves. The printing is going to eventually stop from our government and worldwide. You start to see certain places where the economy is slowing down. You see that happening right now in Germany, the economy is slowing down. Japan hit another dip in their economy. And all that's affecting us. China is starting to slow down. People in China right now, millions, are trying to move out at alarming rates. Alarming rates. Why? Because their economy is slowing down. Why? Because we as Americans are buying less. So the return off those stock markets and even the bond market for corporations is going to go down. And then eventually we want to get higher interest rates. We just don't know when. And I wish I had a crystal ball for that. Right? So let's talk about, let's go back this one. Let's talk, the next thing I think is the big thing that nobody's talking about is taxes. Right now, the biggest thing that kills our wealth, the way that we work the most, is taxes. We all work 3 months out of the year just to pay Uncle Sam. So you work January, February, March, and all the way to California, so you might have to pay Jerry Brown, so we work April. Right? And then some of us work. So most of us are paying for taxes, and when we retire, we have to consider taxes. And we just can't base it off of that tax rates are going to stay the same when we retire. We have to really consider what tax rate is going to be if our government changes it. Our government got a huge amount of debt. Huge amount of debt. And with that debt, they eventually have to raise revenue. And why do we have this huge amount of debt? Because we've been going to wars. We went to Iraq, we went to Afghanistan, we've been in Africa, we've been so many places that we don't even know about. And we're spending so much money in our Defense Department where we're spending over 50%. But yet our workforce has shrunk drastically. Right? This is the smallest workforce we have ever had in U.S. history, even though our unemployment rate has been going down. Because it's false numbers that they're giving out compared to what they used to be. And with that, we're eventually going to have to raise our revenue to pay for our older society as well. Health insurance, Obamacare is going to cost us. Medicare is still going to cost us. Social Security is going to cost us. And as we all know, the people who want to pay the taxes is going to be me and you. It's not going to be the people who should pay for taxes, which is our corporations. Major corporations, not your small LLC, but your major corporations. Your GE got the tax returns. Your Verizon paying less than 4%. It's going to be us going to pay for taxes. And eventually the government is going to need more money. And the only people who are going to have to pay for that is us. So when we really have to think about retiring, we want to have to think about what we're going to do with taxes. Because the taxes, even if we don't go up, the taxes do affect us. They tell us when we're going to have to pull money out of our IRAs with required minimum distribution at 70.5. The taxes affect us with our Social Security as well, because if we make a certain amount of money, our Social Security income tax, we get taxed on it again, which is double taxation, which is BS in my world. So when we look at retirement, we have to look at how we can diversify and get some tax-free money in our portfolio. And there's a couple ways we do it. One way we could do it is we could contribute to a Roth IRA. And one thing now I'm seeing more and more corporations do when I see clients is they'll offer Roth 401k plans, which is great because all that money is going tax deferred. You use it for tax-free, which is great compared to your IRA. Also, we could convert your regular IRAs or non-deductibles over to a Roth IRA. Because the problem with regular Roth IRAs, when you're doing natural contributions, if you're doing okay in California, which is just okay, you probably cannot do a Roth IRA normally. And there's one last one, is cash value life insurance, which with the buildup in it designed properly, you can use it to pull out tax-free. And the last, but not fourth, is municipal bonds. Where you put the money held by the new Carlson City with the bond that is not privately funded but public funded. And you get a rate of return back on that. And those rate returns and those funds, interest is going to be all tax-free for you.
I don't know much about bonds, but I've heard with the low interest rates that bonds, I've heard a couple people say, hey, bonds might be a good investment. I've heard a lot of people say bonds aren't a good investment. What's your take on bonds?
So remember, you have different types of bonds. You have municipal bonds, which are, and all bonds are the same that somebody's borrowing money from you. So you have municipal bonds, you have treasury bonds, which is federal treasuries for them, and then you have corporate bonds. The problem when people are talking about bonds is when interest rates so low, that if your interest rates go higher, your bond that you buy and how you hold it is going to lose power. So I think there is, for a lot of bonds, as treasury bonds, which are being so low, there is going to be a problem. But with corporate bonds, might find something that can actually give you a good rate of return. You're just hoping that with interest rates, when they do spike up, which we don't, that the bonds don't lose value. And people have been talking about a bond bubble for the longest. And so we're not sure if there's going to be a bubble or not. There's a couple bubbles I've been hearing. Bond bubble, there's a student loan bubble.
Definitely still
Yeah.
going bubble. Definitely.
There's even real estate bubble
But
you're talking about.
like
again.
typically, how long is corporate debt written for? Like is it a 10-year corporate bond? So if you hold it to maturity, even though if rates increase, you're not going to lose principal.
Exactly, as long as you hold it for the until maturity, correct.
But if interest rates go up, bonds go down, it's just that simple.
Right, the bonds that you're holding goes down for its value unless you hold them to maturity. The value of it. Because it's hard to sell. Why would I buy your bond and you selling it to me for? Why would I buy a brand new one as interest rates go up at 7%? It wouldn't make no sense to purchase your bond. So this is the ideal retirement portfolio for most people. But not everybody's going to be different. Your retirement portfolio, first, everybody should have some guaranteed money. That guaranteed money should come from your Social Security if you're lucky. And I say this, everybody's going to be different and customized, but most people should have some type. So if you're a young person like me, where I'm 30, I don't have a guaranteed bucket, which means your Social Security and the pension. I don't work for the state, so I don't have CalPERS. I don't think Social Security is going to be modified based off not like my statement says that will go online. So I don't even go online for the statement. The second account that people have is your taxable account, where you got the tax deduction now, the money grows tax deferred, but when you retire, that money's going to be taxed, which is your IRAs, your 401k, your 403b, your 457, so on and so forth. Your SEP if you're a business owner. Your third bucket is going to be your tax-free account, and that's your Roth IRA, your Roth 401k. The reason you have these different taxation things, because like we said, most of your money is taxed the day you work for. And you use these budgets based off tax rates and using proper tax planning and retirement planning so you can maximize how much of your income is going to be when you retire. The other bucket is going to be your tax-free guaranteed money, which we use life insurance as a pension plan for you. We don't have it tax-free because there are some guarantees within the life insurance for you. And the last bucket is real estate. I think one way, if you're looking at it right now, real estate does a couple things for you with it, and Steve will talk about more. It helps you sustain, preserve some of your wealth, and it helps you grow some wealth. And your taxation is sometimes based off when you sell and so forth. You're not going to always pay income taxes, but you're going to pay capital gains based off of what type of real estate you do have. Now, if you guys have any other questions, you guys can give me a call. And be free to call me, email me, Twitter, and you can also watch us on YouTube for your friends if you guys missed it. Thank you so much.